Americani loquuntur pediludium.
Latin or Italian?
Latin.
Is that Americans watching a footy in Latin?
No, it's the people called Americans. They talk about the football.
Close enough. Now write it 100 times.
Conjugated correctly.
Ethan and Benjamin Kassel are Americans. Watching the footy.
Liam Ryan saying, kick it my way, I want to jump over the pack, and here he comes! Ryan!
This is Buddy Franklin! This is the greatest showman!
Got the handball off to Myers. Myers looking for the lead of Stengel. Gee, they're good. Gee, they're sharp. Razzle dazzle Rioli.
Oh, who else? McDonald! Around the body. Cheers up!
Inside the centre square, boys kick the goal. Boys kick the goal from inside the centre. I can't believe
I think conjugated correctly, I think this would be Americani di pediludio loquuntur. That's actually kind of close. Americans watch football would be Americani pediludium spectant. The people called Romanes, they go the house.
Romani ite domum.
There's a whole Wikipedia article about that.
I love it. It's episode 241 of Americans Watching the Footy. Hello from South San Francisco, California, though by the time you hear this, I, Benjamin Kassel, editor supreme, will be back in San Diego. I'm alongside my older brother, Ethan.
That is me. I am them.
I am them. Do they know about that?
Oh God, we're going off the rails already, but like it was audio of someone calling the police to report a drunk driver, and they asked you like, all right, where are they in relation to you? Are you behind them? Are you in front of them? I am them.
You am them?
I am them. Brian Harambe's sleeping right next to us. He's on Instagram, a cat named Brian. Normally I don't give that until the intermission, and I don't care.
How excited are you, Ethan, that you get to meet his namesake?
I mean, that's the plan.
I mean, he's got all sorts of plans for his footy pilgrimage. It's, 12 games?
12 games, 16 teams, 6 ovals. And now that we have a VFL schedule, I can tell you it's at least a VFL curtain raiser, a Sandful curtain raiser, and maybe a standalone VFL match as well, TBD, depending on weather and other plans that day.
You'll check out some of the locales though, right? If nothing else.
Oh yeah, I definitely want to explore around Williamstown in particular.
Awesome.
Unfortunately, in terms of, various cool venues and places ending in town, no Queenstown.
Because you're not getting the Tasmania this time.
No, I am not. So, round 12, I guess one of the themes for this round was Moral Victory Round.
No, this is Moral Victory Round. That's like our current title for this episode if nothing else comes up.
I also think this was a round where most of the disappointing teams or teams that were expected to be bad, even if they didn't win, performed well. I can only really think of 2 teams whose fans should be like furious with where they are right now and how they played this week. And so relative to expectations, most people have a lot to be satisfied with.
How much are Essendon satisfied? Let's start with that then.
I think they should be extremely satisfied. Brisbane 13-12-90 defeated Essendon 11-6-72. I thought this game was going to be ass. Essendon losing Kyle Langford, Harry Mackay, and Zach Reed to injuries.
You said Harry Mackay, I'm going to let it slide.
God damn it.
I mean, there is a theory.
Yes, and now that they're not going to be playing against each other, I think Barry just split into 2 people for that one game. But yeah.
Or was there just like a disturbance of the Force, glitch of the Matrix or something?
One of those things with like, parallel universes getting tangled up.
Damn it, Doctor Strange.
It's like a multiverse thing. Anyway, coming into this game, I thought Essendon were just going to get rolled. I tipped Brisbane to win by 41.
I said 29. I thought Brisbane were going to be able to let their foot off the gas late, and there was no real taking the foot off because there wasn't an ability to manage that. Brisbane's inaccuracy in the second quarter contributed a lot to that because they had a lot going right for them, but only kicked 1 goal 6. And so what was a 32-point lead at quarter time went down to 26 at halftime, despite still having the better runs of play, you'd say.
I thought the first quarter was a sign of things to come, where this just looked like a blowout from the start.
I had a tough time staying awake during the first quarter and just thinking, yeah, I don't blame you. It was just like, fuck, I've got something for the state that's due tomorrow for my teaching. Do I really want to stay up and watch this shit?
And this wouldn't have been an I shaved my balls for this game, because like I wouldn't have shaved my balls in the first place for this because my expectations were low. And then Essendon started to hold serve in the second quarter and then played really well in the third. And they briefly took a 1-point lead, but a couple of kicks in the fourth didn't go straight. And Brisbane ended up finishing the game on a 20-1 run to win it, as we said, 90-72. But if you're Essendon, knowing what you were up against, knowing what you were missing, you have to feel like really positive. And that starts with Jai Caldwell, who was great at clearance. That third quarter, he was the only one who could all night do anything to stop Hugh McCluggage, who I honestly didn't realize just how great of a game McCluggage had had until I looked at the numbers after.
It's weird because McCluggage had been that prominent figure for, the entire season. And then, I guess, a closer game was one where his contributions might have been, I'm not going to say under the radar, like understated. I don't know the exact right wording for it. But this is a case where going back and seeing the numbers does help put things into context. 41 disposals, 17 contested possessions, 7 clearances, 11 marks and 4 tackles. A very complete game, again, from McCluggage, who, got to be their best and fairest leader.
Yeah, and this had me thinking, at this point in the season, you could probably consider players from like at least 10 different teams as in the Brownlow race right now. The race both for the umpires Brownlow, which, they'll probably just give to Patrick Cripps again, and the real important award, America's Brownlow. Like, I have no idea, because we do not look at these things, but I have no idea who would be in the lead right now. It could be like a McCluggage or maybe Ed Richards.
McCluggage, I wouldn't say Noah Anderson, because Matt Rowlett had a couple really strong games at the start of the year.
Dawson is probably in the crowd too. He is the leader on the Brownlow Predictor on the AFL site, which is pretty good. It's not amazing, but it's pretty good.
It did have Cripps winning last year.
Didn't have him getting fucking 45. Couple other McCluggage things, though. Did you mention the 13 inside 50s, 12 score involvements, and 6 intercepts?
Those are ones I did not mention yet. No, but it's a lot.
He had one sequence that really stood out to me. Also, for a guy who's usually a pretty sloppy player, and that's just like, you can kind of take that with everything else he does, only 4 turnovers. If he had 4 turnovers out of a 20 disposal game, you'd say, all right, good. We like what we're doing here.
What was the sequence that you were thinking of?
He had one, let's see, the very first goal of the game. He had the tackle to create the turnover, then had the assist to set up Charlie Cameron, who kind of sold the Jaden Laverde contact to get a 50 that took him to the goal square. Laverde, by the way, bad start to this game and then really bounced back. But again, the one that stood out to me was Caldwell and then Nick Martin for Essendon.
Martin started halfback, quickly went into the middle. The more midfield time for Martin, the better. Kind of continuation of the positives from the week prior with more midfield time for Martin. Again, when you got Clark and Dursby and Roberts able to occupy the outside more, it frees up Martin to play middle. It frees up Merritt to do whatever the hell he wants to do in the middle 2/3. And that's probably the best path forward. Again, for Essendon to be missing who they were, especially on the tall side, and to stick with the game for as long as they did, is a lot of progress in and of itself. You looked at their lack of tall, so you'd be thinking, they're just going to get pummeled by Harris Andrews and Jack Payne.
I think Essendon also gave us a look at, like, how do you shut the Lions down? How do you beat them? And I think it really hinges on, can you stop the Ashcroft brothers, which for 3 quarters they did, and then Will went off in the 4th.
Levi was subbed out, actually.
I wouldn't call it a you suck sub. He was unremarkable, though. He was quiet. He wasn't bad. It's just the best version of Brisbane is one that involves the Ashcroft brothers going off. You know who else kind of went off in this game was Kyle Oman, got his first couple goals of the year.
After the first, we thought he'd done his ankle again.
Yes, I was pretty convinced on that. But he ended up with 3 goals and 2 assists. Definitely another candidate for votes this week. But I think because of the way this game started, because the first quarter is the one that looked so bad, is why I leave this one with such a positive opinion of Essendon. And I don't know if I've ever felt positive about Essendon after a loss. Couple other things. Brad Scott did not help himself by having Jai Caldwell on the bench for like, what, a 9-minute stretch during the fourth quarter. Like, hello, this is the guy who's quieted McCluggage and was your best player in the third. And then Chris Fagan took Will Ashcroft off for like their final rotation, which didn't seem to make much sense.
I mean, they didn't concede again at that point, did they?
No, but I can tell you that Brisbane regained control when Caldwell was off. That one ended up being significant.
I mean, Caldwell was just absolute ball magnet. He had, 18 disposals and 7 clearances in the third quarter alone?
This was one of those games where, like, you want to show someone the importance of midfield play that doesn't know footy. And, you know, when people first watch footy, they think, oh, the guy that kicks the most goals must be the best player. Like, no, watch this game and watch in particular. Like, watch what number 6 does in the third quarter.
Watch how he opens up the game for everybody else.
You know, this might actually be a decent game to show somebody for, like, their first footy experience, because there's a little of everything. There's a big run. There's a part where you think it's a blowout. There's comebacks. There's swings.
There's guys fighting through potential injuries.
There's country roads, which I know a lot of Australian audiences hate goal songs, and I don't get why. I think it's fun.
I think it's because they don't like that it's an American thing that's being brought over, because it comes from hockey.
Yes, but like, as I've said, it's hard to do individual goal songs for hockey because a lot of times you don't know who's going to get credit with the goal. It's like, did he tip it? Did it go off the opponent's stick? Whereas this, I mean, there was one in a game this weekend, and I forget which, where, you know, I think it was the Crows game.
Yeah, it was the one that Pete Ling, I mean, that's an assist of the week candidate there with James Pete Ling.
Yes.
Getting one throw on the boundaries, like, wait, who touched that last? Oh, wait, that is Riley Kilthorpe's goal.
Yeah, but 99-point-something% of footy goals,
it's pretty clear.
You know whose goal it is, so you can do something with that. And I think if maybe you don't want one for everyone, I think at least, you know, maybe you have like 1 or 2 players that are worthy of it. Like, I've said many times, you know, Josh Tracy with this nickname should be Cyclone by Baby Bash.
And there are cases like that in hockey, too, where, like, was it...
Like, Alex Ovechkin has his own.
Didn't Johnny Gaudreau have Johnny Be Good, or was that Tyler Johnson for the...
Somebody did. This game also had one of the more fun goals that I've seen in a while.
I mean, there were a fair amount of fun goals, I think, between the goal scorers and the actual goals themselves.
Yes, but the one that tied the game late in the third for Essendon, where Jade Gresham kind of dribbled check side across the face.
Yeah.
And Nate Caddy kicked, you know, with his back to the goal over his head. That was awesome. I mean, and
assist and goal of the year candidates there.
And that was when I was definitely like believing in this thing. I mean, even before that, I was believing like, oh my God, Essendon have made this a game. Because after the first quarter, you know, normally I'm not one to believe a game is over after a quarter, but I had such low expectations. And then to come in and see them just get blasted from the start, thinking that by this point, I really believe that Essendon were actually going to win this game. And they have had a decent recent track record at the Gabba. Now, one of those was against like a super injured Lions team.
Right, I remember that. I did not think Essendon were going to win this, but I was glad to see that they had made it close. And what solidified my belief that the Lions were going to win it? The rain coming in. It was definitely increasing around 3/4 time, which is like, yes, this is Queensland. This will fit the Lions. And you didn't expect Caldwell would have another like 18 disposal.
No, but I also didn't think he'd be on the bench for 9 minutes.
It's a weird situation where I do believe the right team won this game.
Oh, I do too. They ended up winning an expected score by 16, but there's a difference between who won and who impressed me.
Yeah, the Lions, I mean, it wasn't always the known quantities because you expected more out of the Ashcrofts.
But this is where you talk about the power of expectation. And I think that's, again, a common theme in this round, which is like expectations affecting, you know, your attitude towards things.
Well, Essendon will be taking this form into King's Eve, and I think they should be feeling pretty good going into that.
This week, I want to actually do like the, you know, excitement, like how excited are we for each game ranking?
You're excited? Feel these nipples.
But I would put that one probably at third. I think I got to go Adelaide, Brisbane at the top, and then Geelong, Gold Coast second. But I think that's a solid third, Essendon, Carlton. Yeah?
It seems reasonable for now. It's definitely what the podium is. And, you know, they're not going to get any relief on the tall side ahead of King's Eve. So what you saw from them on Thursday is what they'll have for this game, but
If Jaden Laverde can play more like he finished this game rather than how he started it, you feel pretty decent.
if Harry Mackay has like even a half decent game, I think good luck.
Yeah, and Curnow, who I guess during our last episode didn't even really address Charlie Curnow, but he is a ridiculously strong mark. I love when they drop him back defensively at the end of quarters if needed.
And you see more teams doing that with their tall guys now too. Eagles have been doing it with Allen.
Look, there were calls this week that he would have gotten that both Jeremy Cameron and Ollie Henry didn't. So, you know you're going up against that with him.
I would still tip the Blues.
I am too, but I'm not like, this could end up being like a 40-point game in either direction.
Collingwood 16-11, 107, defeating Hawthorn 8-8, 56. A 6-3 second quarter gave Collingwood a 24-point halftime advantage, and they didn't look back. I mean, is it nice to see Hawthorn getting taken down another peg? Yeah. Yes, but also the fact that it was Collingwood.
Oh, I still enjoyed it. I look forward to going to the rematch of this and, getting to be a Collingwood fan for the night. Because, it's like,
How many times are you a Collingwood fan?
exactly. It's like,
I mean, you're always a Collingwood fan against the Blues.
how often do you get to be the bad guy? How often, do you get to like pull for the Yankees?
At the same time, Hawthorn are like feeling like that kind of bad guy too at times, but they're more like what team would they be like? Like, I wouldn't say the Rays exactly.
No, the Rays are cool.
Yeah.
I don't know what the proper comparison here is.
2000s Oregon football?
No, more like Chip Kelly, Oregon. That's a decent-ish comparison, except they haven't had any Cliff Harris. Cliff Harris was an Oregon football player. Do you not remember? Cops smelled weed. They asked, like, where is it? And he said,
We smoked it all. Yes.
Jamie Elliott, another 5 goals.
He was tied for the Coleman lead after this game. Of course, then Jeremy Cameron happened, especially garbage time Jeremy Cameron.
Yeah, he also had 2 assists in this one.
I mean, you already felt good about Collingwood coming in because of their form, even when the younger guys were in. And who did they get back this game? Oh, only Darcy Moore, Scott Pendlebury, Lockie Schultz, and Steele Sidebottom.
And Bobby Hill.
Yep. But the player that stands out to me the most in this game, for positive reasons, is a very, very deserving Rising Star nominee, Edward Allen.
Now, I've liked Ed Allen from the start. He looks mature beyond his years. I don't know how high his ceiling is, but he's got one of the highest floors of any, did he debut this year or late last year?
He debuted in the draw against Frio last year, and I remember that because his dad played for Frio. And who did his dad also play for? Ben Allen was a premiership player for Hawthorn. So for Ed to first debut against Frio and then have his Rising Star performance against Hawthorn is great for family drama, and I just hope that Bo can live up to expectations as well, because I look forward to Ed and Bo Allen potentially going against each other for years to come now.
Got you. So Ed Allen, the only other game he played was the dead rubber against Melbourne, and he was pretty good. This was his 7th game this year. He's been subbed in twice. He just turned 21. He has a really high floor.
He's a pretty smooth player, and we saw that from the beginning, and this was his most heavily involved game so far. 23 disposals, 5 marks, and 3 clearances, some of the more prominent statistics there.
Only 3 score involvements, but 5 intercepts. And the contested split was very nice,
Yeah, I mean, a player who was often starting halfback or back of the center square, didn't try to do anything too crazy, just smart kicking is one thing that I noticed from him a lot. And we know it's been tough for a lot of the younger guys in Collingwood to get games, the ongoing saga of Finn McRae. But for the first time I saw Allen, I thought, this is a guy who's going to get in there. It might take a couple years, but he's going to be part of that next push.
Other thing that Collingwood did in this game that I really liked was full field Brody Majacek, especially in the first half. He was kind of all over, and then second half he settled more into his usual forward role, but he was just an impactful player all around.
Honestly, I'm going to say it, without Mason Cox in there, they needed a taller marking presence elsewhere on the oval that wasn't just Darcy Cameron, because that's how Collingwood has employed Mason more often than not, especially when his goal kicking has become shakier and shakier. Now, I don't think Mason's part of the best 23 perhaps ever again for Collingwood, unfortunately, but you've got enough capable goal kickers, both tall and small, that you can rotate guys around. And if you've got someone who's as sure-handed as Myacek, give him that time. Give Dan McStay some of that time once he's healthy. I mean, he is potentially going to be playing King's birthday. He's a test for this week. And yeah, you'd keep him forward to start, but once he gets more into things, give him some of that wing marking time.
I'm a little surprised Jack Crisp didn't get in the coaches' votes. Coaches' votes for this game were kind of funky. Elliott and Sidebottom tied at the top. I didn't think Sidebottom was that great. Elliott definitely was, but I know Crisp only had 16 disposals, but the 6 clearances were really good, and he just got a couple of those like key knock-ons and stuff. 4 score involvements and 4 intercepts. More than half of his disposals contested and closing in on 70% efficiency. I thought this was just another really good game as part of the Jack Crisp renaissance.
And if I'm correct, King's birthday will mark 250 consecutive games for Crisp. So that's going to be something worth celebrating as part of everything else. Is the King's birthday crowd going to be bigger than the crowd they got for this game, honestly? That's a question.
It's going to be close. I think because it's a holiday it might, but 83,706, that rematch will definitely be one that I get a ticket for well in advance. That and the other Hawthorne game I'll see against Carleton. I cannot say enough how funny it is that the 2 teams I can't stand are going to be playing in my first game.
It's not going to be pure hate watch, just like, oh my God, I'm at the footy.
Oh, I know, but it is also funny. I probably should get like a I hope both teams lose sign or something.
I was satisfied with Collingwood being able to play at pace, even with the older guys back in and keeping on the tackle pressure as well. Plus 21 in tackles in the third quarter, even as they padded their lead, because they went from a 20-point lead at halftime to 40 at the final change.
Jack Ginvin was good for Hawthorne and kind of starts and stops there. Hawthorne had 38 tackles for the entire game. And it wasn't much better the week before against Brisbane.
That's like a very anti-Hawthorne thing to happen, especially now you've got Nash back in there too, and a healthier Newcomb. And that's just the start of things, but this is another very good game for the no Will Day, no Hawthorne believers, and I'm one of those.
Yeah, tackles in that game a week earlier were 59-36. This one, 82-38. So they did have 2 more tackles than last week, but they got more than doubled in the tackle count this time. This was just bad. I will say, Jai Newcomb looked better than he had the prior week. I don't know if he's at 100%, but he definitely looked healthier than he did against Brisbane, and it took him a little bit less time to get in the game, but there were very few positives here. Now James Sicily's hurt.
I mean, he'd been playing hurt. The question was like, why play him at all?
Hawthorne were plus 10 in clearances, but pretty poor in basically everything else.
That's also something that carried over from the prior week, because they did get the immediate generation, but nothing else really coming off that. Quick to turn the ball over. It's the cleanliness there off the ball that's missing.
Let's see. Player ratings really didn't like Connor McDonald. Jack Scrimshaw got subbed off, and I think he was pretty poor. I thought Josh Battle was really stinking it up. Might even be a worst on round candidate. He had a couple of bad turnovers and just got beaten so many times. I mean, he's not a one-on-one defender. He's able to move the ball out of the back and sweep around. And when he's turning it over, that's his biggest strength becoming a weakness.
And he's going to have probably more defensive 50 time with Sicily out too. I mean, it's going to push Barris as that main defender even more. Do you bring Hardwick back? I will not be sold on that by any means.
I mean, I think Hardwick's okay in either role. I think as Kalsherdeer gets healthy and gets into form, you can feel better about bringing Hardwick back. But the first 2 goals Collingwood scored in this game, one was Jamie Elliott marking in front of Josh Battle, and then the second was him turning over a kick to Ned Long that gave Nick Dacos a goal.
Another very good game out of Ned Long. Was this another unicorn game, I believe? I believe he didn't have any scores, but had double-digit score involvements and double-digit tackles.
He had 10 score involvements and 11 tackles. Well, it was much more noticeable against North, where he was the obvious best on ground,
and yet Nick Dacos will get the 3.
Probably. Let's see what the AFL's Brownlow predictor said for that one. For this one, they really liked Sidebottom.
Well, I looked that up. I just want to mention something here. Brody Myacek brought up his 250th goal for Collingwood in this game. This is a guy who came in partway through 2018 into the AFL side and was drafted as a key defender. He is one of the most reliable goal kickers in the AFL. We also saw him be used as an upfield mark in this game. Cannot speak more highly of just the work ethic and the consistency that Myacek has. Player that I truly enjoy watching. Also, through 12 games, Jamie Elliott has more goals than Collingwood's goal leader did last year for the entire season.
Who was their leader last year?
Bobby with 30.
Gotcha.
I will note, though, Collingwood had, I think, what? 13 players last year that had at least 10 goals, but nobody with more than 30. Jamie already has 33.
Yeah, for that North game, they predict Nick Dacos 3, Lon 2, Josh Dacos 1.
They give him 3 for this week, too.
No, they give Nick 1. They went side bottom 3, Elliott 2, Nick 1. I think Myacek and Crisp deserve to be in those conversations as well.
Well, yeah, my praise of Myacek goes beyond this game, but was highlighted with a more versatile showing from him. It was rainy on the Gold Coast, and this game I didn't expect to be as entertaining as it was. I mean, I came back to this game. I flew in to SFO during this game, came home and watched a pretty compelling conclusion in front of not a lot of people, which is just not great for the whole Ross Lyons saga for the week prior. Just like, oh, really disappointing crowd in the rain.
Okay, I will say this. Attendance was 11,750. Considering rain, I understand, but also it was probably about half Frio fans. Like, you expect playing a big Victorian club to have that, but you don't expect that against Frio. So on one hand, good on Dockers fans for showing up. On the other, there can't have been more than about 6,000 to 7,000 Suns fans. Gold Coast 9-10-64, defeated by Fremantle 11-9-75. Dockers came out of the gates, led by 20 after a quarter. They had 26 points off turnovers. They held the lead at halftime. Suns took a couple of 1-point leads in the third, and then the Dockers held them off. It did get down to 5 points when Mac Andrew went forward with 4:08 left, but a couple of key broken tackles. Dockers were able to hold some possession, and then Jai Amos bounced the sealer through with 25 seconds left after another really good tackle, which was Shea Bolton chasing down Nick Holman.
Pressure from the Dockers was top tier in this game. Bolton was a big part of that, but more so, let me just say it properly for everybody, Sam Switkowski.
You literally just say it how it's spelled. This is not like, Blaszczykowski or something. I'm sorry, one of my favorite things ever was Blaszczykowski finds it difficult to pronounce new teammate Aubameyang's name. It's like, Hawthorne complaining about umpiring.
Connor Nash complaining about a high call.
Oh my God, that was the funniest thing. Oh shit, we didn't talk about the most important thing from the Collingwood game.
That Lloyd Meek wasn't suspended?
No.
That we saw Magpie Jesus again?
Not even that. What happened for the first time in AFL history?
An 80,000th goal at the MCG?
Nick Dacos contested mark.
Shit!
Happened in the first quarter in front of James Warple on a steel side bottom kick.
And there was considerable applause for that, and it was hilarious. He is now worthy of winning a Brownlow. Anyway, back to this thing on the Gold Coast. Sam Switkowski pressure. He's never going to be the main story, but a player who can still set the tone with pressure along with Bolton. There were enough mid-forward pieces there, and he has been a longer-standing part of that. Now that he's back healthy, it's just going to complicate the selection for that even further, and I don't think the Dockers mind one bit. What was great was that there was already more pressure and more drive from the mid-forward group this year than we'd seen in a while, especially these past couple games against the Giants, against the Power, with the resurgence of Murphy Reed, with Bolton having some steadier contribution in the middle as well, Isaiah Dudley popping up. Now you have Switkowski and you have more of the polish there too, and more of the experience in a Fremantle system.
I thought Jordan Clark was good in this game. I didn't quite get the amount of love he got from the coaches' votes, but he was definitely good. You could see him kind of shaping some of those attacks from the back. Switkowski only getting 2 coaches' votes seems low. They went, this is an interesting one. Clark 9, Anderson 6, Bolton and Jackson each with 5, and then Brayshaw and Switkowski each with 2, and Rowell with 1. So I'm not sure where the other 5 went. Obviously, Clark got one of them. I'm not sure how this got broken up. This is kind of tricky.
We wanted to go back through this one. I think it was it the Eagles-Saints game last year where
Yes, that was the really bizarre one.
I remember we like really went through it and we think that we figured it out. You can find that in our Instagram archives. Other notable things for Frio. His name is Patrick Voss and he has a big chest.
He's kind of a goober, but he's actually developing some real forward craft, and you put that alongside Murphy Reed. I mean, who, by the way, I went back and watched that game against Port, and I think that was one of the more complete Murphy Reed games instead of just like sporadic moments or like, a couple of flurries where he was awesome. Like, this is a constant presence in that one.
His goals were spread out in that game, and I think that was emblematic of his just consistent.
I think he had like 18 disposals in that game too.
Right. But no, Voss's skill set has become pretty clear. It's just a question of the finishing ability. And if he can do that, it's just another pretty scary piece to add in there with how physical he is.
The first quarter was where the Dockers won this game. It was the deficit that Gold Coast was basically playing from all night. Frio had 12 forward half intercepts in the first quarter. And again, the 26 points off turnovers, I think, just say a lot. Nat Fife made his season debut. That was notable. He didn't really do much. They took Carl Warner out because of hamstring awareness. Fife did actually have 7 disposals, but there was really nothing he did that was like, I wrote down in our notes other than that he got subbed in.
I mean, good to see him again. That's obvious. Other substitution was a bit more.
I didn't like it.
I'd say disappointing because Leo Lombard had done some very good things in his first 3 quarters. It did feel like a planned sub, but Damian Hardwick, you don't always have to follow the plan. And Lombard provides some energy, had that nice first goal, bit of check side in there.
Clearly, the plan had to have been, if no one subbed out injured, we're subbing Lombard out.
For David Swallow, I'll say. So former captains being the sub both ways.
I would have subbed Braden Fiorini out. He really did nothing. I get you didn't want to take Ned Moyle out, having the 2 rucks with Jackson and Darcy both playing, but that would have been an option. Or it was a quietish game from Will Powell. Or you could have gone one of Moyle or like Jed Walter probably. Just in terms of like taking out a bigger body and going smaller. You had enough that I don't think this was a team that was best equipped to match up with the Jackson-Darcy combo. What I think was basically Frio could have played this game with or without the Jackson-Darcy combo. I think they've shown that they have the combinations available. I think that they kind of got a weaker Suns lineup because they kind of goaded the Suns into matching up with their talls, despite the conditions favoring smaller, kind of grittier players at times because of the rain. It's a weird one. You want to take care of that matchup, but the conditions of this game should have indicated otherwise. So Ned Moyle would have been my call for that reason. Yeah, I just would have done Fiorini and called it the You Suck sub. Like, if I was a Suns fan, he would have been on my shit list for this game. He did have a couple of decent moments late, and player ratings actually don't hate him. They actually gave him 12.8. What the fuck? Could also done Ben Ainsworth. He didn't do much.
And he's one of their barometers.
But yeah, Fiorini, he ended up with 19 touches, but I thought he was pretty poor. This was not going to be the cleanest game with the conditions. The rain got heavier as it went on. This game had a lot of stoppages, but it didn't feel as stoppage heavy as that like Richmond and North game. 105 hitouts combined is a pretty fair amount.
105 in the rain, I get. 137 when it's completely clear is, I'm not going to say an abomination, it's just not the kind of watch that's all that compelling. Like, I don't think any casual fans would have been won over by that at all. I honestly think maybe some rugby league types would have been intrigued in it just because of like the very stop and go, tough movement over the course of the
What's an origin tackle?
Maybe.
The biggest stat that stands out to me when you look at the team numbers for this game was the 20 tackles inside 50 to 12, and that's Frio's forward pressure.
This, by the way, was the first of the moral victory games of the round, with the Suns winning on expected score by 7.6. Did it feel that way to you?
I mean, I still feel like the proper team won, but if you had told me who would have, you asked me who wins on expected score, yeah, I probably would have said the Suns. They had a few chances in the fourth where they, it was like a couple of behinds before the Sam Flanders goal that cut it to 12 after a kind of dumb 50 on Corey Wagner for standing too close to the mark.
Yeah. One last thing. Why the fuck was Andrew Brayshaw not taken off for the final minute or so of the game after that big collision with, was that Powell? Like, they stopped.
He got Daniel Rioli needed a head, and then he just waved the doctor off.
Yes.
Okay.
You stop playing because of head contact. You should not be able to wave off a trainer.
You should not be able to wave off a trainer for a head thing at all at this point. It might be, maybe that's is that valid? Like, look, if a trainer comes out for a head thing, you got to come off. In fact, I would even draw up a rule that says, if the concussion spotter or whatever term you're using, and NFL uses the concussion spotter term, like if you're out of subs and there's a concussion spotter thing, that doesn't even count. You can get an extra sub out of that. You could get a 76th interchange off that and that alone. Even if you don't have to take them for the full 20-minute assessment, that's fine. Not every possible knock to the head needs the 20-minute assessment, but at the very least, it should be
the initial check on the sidelines.
You got to get them the initial check, Get them off and have them say, yeah, Obama's still the president. There are 48 states. Okay, good. You're back.
Fixing that and getting players off the field for that initial assessment would do way more, I think, in the eyes of a lot of people and in terms of actual health than these automatic 3-game suspensions for concussing incidents. I say this in light of Alex Pierce getting off for the Darcy Burton-Jones.
That one should have been, I think, in the 1 to 2 range. Similarly,
Lloyd Beek wasn't penalized at all for the Pat Lipinski play.
I don't know where I sit on that one. I do know that the one at the end of the round, or the penultimate game of the round, I think they got correct.
It's a suspension that deserves more games, and we're going to talk about that when we get to it. One more game before our break, though.
This was going to be one of the games we end up talking about the most, which I sure didn't expect. This was the game I probably thought the least of entering this round.
Greater Western Sydney Giants 12-8-80, defeating Richmond 10-17-77, but it took a 32-1 fourth quarter to make that happen, and an inspirational 3-quarter time speech from the likely, sadly, never playing AFL again, Alan Ward.
Let's note also that Richmond, this was another moral victory. They won expected score by 20.4. I feel like this is the rare game that, both teams can come out of largely feeling good. If you're Richmond, you had a 41-point first quarter.
You had 27 scoring shots against the Giants.
Now, kicking 4-12 over the final 3 quarters, not great, but as long as this doesn't turn into a trend of blowing games, and with a young team, that's fine. You're going to run out of gas.
And especially for a team that pushes the pace like the Giants do, and that they did very well in the fourth quarter. They at first were hesitant to kind of get through the zone that Richmond set up. And after a while, they just said, fuck it, we're the Giants. We can do this. And it worked beautifully in the end. A lot of players you can credit for that in the fourth quarter. But I think it was also just a team thing, realizing, hey, Richmond's getting fatigued. Their tackling's going way down. We could probably exploit them for more runs, and they did manage that. Great to see Josh Kelly back for the Giants. He's the one that I think glues the midfield together. Darcy Jones, some really solid moments. Darcy Jones and his helmet, thank you. More midfield time, I believe it was 4 clearances, including 2 from the center. And I noticed him getting some runs through there in the second half. It's not like there were many consistently good Giants players in this game, though.
I thought Callum Brown was pretty good, and I thought aside from a quick stretch in the third quarter, Sam Taylor had the better of Tom Lynch. This was one of the underrated things about this game was, I know it's not the thing that sells tickets, a key defender shutting down a forward. Not that there were a lot of tickets sold for this game. 9,770. There wasn't any rain. I think it had been a rainy week, but not during this game. And it was probably half Richmond fans. I know GWS's tickets are priced a little higher than the rest of the league, which is dumb. That's not a way to help increase attendance, but I think blame mutually falls on the club itself and on their target fan base. Guys, what more do you want here? Anyway, Sam Taylor, other than a stretch of the third quarter, beat Tom Lynch, but Ben Miller totally shut Jesse Hogan down, snapped his 42-game goal streak, left him completely scoreless. And it was a very clear thing also with how Richmond set up their zone and kept the matchups the way they did. They're wanting to A, keep Hogan in the goal square, keep him deep, and B, prevent those deeper entries. And the Giants did have to pick things
out that were shorter a lot of the time, ended up with a lot more of those kicks from 35 to 50 out.
I didn't realize Ben Miller's already 25, but he could end up kind of taking that role that Jacob Wiedering's vacated now that more people know about Wiedering as the best defender no one talks about.
You talk about Lynch having his moments in the third quarter. I also want to credit a 19-year-old forward for Richmond, and that is Jonty Fall. I'm continuing to just really like his AFL level development. Already a really strong mark and contest player. A strong start overall, but then I feel like the rest of his game was emblematic of the entire team. I mean, the strong start was too, then inaccurate, and then nearly non-existent in the fourth quarter. But you were talking about Taylor having a good game, Callum Brown consistently being a problem for Richmond and being a forward because Callum Brown is a forward. I'm also going to credit Toby McMullen for having perhaps his most complete game yet. Definitely the Toby that gets the least amount of attention for the Giants, but I don't think McMullen has had as complete a game at AFL level as he did on Saturday. A goal and an assist from 20, 3 clearances for McMullen, a more consistent disposal and presence all over the oval, and that was nice for McMullen. He got praise from the commentators as well. It's nice to see these younger Giants pieces starting to have their better moments too. But yeah, Richmond just fell off. How much of it was fatigue? How much of it was the Giants figuring stuff out?
I think some of it was the Giants specifically putting Toby Bedford on Tim Taranto, which they probably should have done sooner.
Like from the jump.
Or at least by the second quarter. Now, I will say this. This is one of the rare times we have actually gotten to see all 3 of Richmond's top midfielders healthy. Taranto, Hopper, Prestia.
Welcome back, Meatball. And I think Prestia did so much to open up the game from the center for Jacob Hopper. Prestia's numbers were very good on their own, obviously. A goal to behind from 31, 7 clearances and 5 tackles. But I think the extra attention on him and the physicality he provides at the source opened up a lot of center-based contests for Hopper. And I don't think Hopper has nearly as good a performance, which included 7 center clearances without Prestia being in there. 6 clearances in the first quarter for Hopper.
I get that the Giants won this game, but I think everyone at GWS is aware that they did not play great. The coaches' votes were very Richmond heavy. Let me give you the coaches' votes from this game.
Ethan is Mr. Coach's votes on here.
Prestia 9, Hopper 8, Taranto 5, Ash 5. I didn't think Ash was anything great. Nankervis 2, Miller 1. So yeah, the top 2 and 5 of 6 overall coming from the losing team is pretty rare, especially in a game where it's not like they got robbed. They just ran out of gas. But you know who has impressed me lately for Richmond? Now, some of this carried over from that stoppage fest against North, and a lot of it was just from this game. Which young Tiger I have become a fan of?
I'm thinking about a couple guys for my own liking. Like I was very high on the past couple weeks from Kane McAuliffe.
That's the one.
Okay, yeah. I mean, McAuliffe's ball handling and the time he spends in the middle has been really effective.
You want to talk about quality over quantity? At one point early in the third quarter, 11 out of 12 disposals had been efficient, 7 had been contested, 4 score involvements, 3 intercepts. Pretty quiet the rest of the way, finished with 18 disposals, but 13 of his first 15 were effective, 9 were contested, and he added a 4th and 5th intercept. Like this was, at that point, I would have considered him as one of the best for Richmond outside of the midfield. It was like the midfield trio, him and Ben Miller, and then, obviously GWS did end up on top and get the points they needed. Like if you're Richmond though, I mean, what more could you ask for? You play 3 really good quarters, fall off in the 4th. Unlike a lot of teams, they have their own first rounder, so the loss helps them position that.
And they have North's. Let's just not forget it. Richmond have North's first rounder because North never decreased the offer from their future first rounder from pick 8 all the way down to pick number 27. But no, McAuliffe is one that I've been very high on. Honestly, I'd liked him since his debut going back to last year as the sub. It was a matter of time before he got more of the ball. And I think between him and Tom Brown, you're going to have some really clean full field kicks for Richmond going into 2026 and 27. And that has me really excited. I would have liked to have seen McAuliffe and Tyler Sonzi share some more minutes on ball. And that's even with all the other midfielders having their moments. I think once Tim Taranto got quieted by Bedford. I wanted to see him push more forward, try to break the tag there, and see what Sonzi could do on ball, because he's had that midfield time in the twos, and yet he's playing this higher half-forward role when he's up in the AFL that I don't think suits him as well. It's not like he wasn't bad in this game, but I think he's still being improperly used.
Obviously, considering that they lost and that their fourth quarter was so poor, not everything was perfect for Richmond. Like, I noticed that Campbell Gray was getting targeted in one-on-ones and beaten during the GWS comeback. You know what else is a positive for GWS is that I think this was, even though the numbers still aren't great, this was definitely a better game from Aaron Cadman.
Oh, yeah. He was one of the ones that really got things together in the fourth quarter as well.
I thought even before that, he had been one of their brighter spots. He ended up with 2 goals in the behind, 10 disposals, 7 marks, 4 score involvements. The numbers are not great, but on a day where Jesse Hogan was totally shut down, they needed every bit of that, and just he found ways to insert himself in the game instead of make the game come to him. Who did that article say was like the barometer for GWS?
I had quote tweeted that because I was talking about Watson. It named Stephen Cornelio.
I don't think his sample size is big enough, but I would say one of them, at least right now, is Xavier O'Halloran, who did not have a very good game, and then did pick it up in some of the later moments.
2 weeks ago, very down, didn't stick with things in terms of temper as well. Much better the week prior, and it showed. And when he got things together near the end of this game, I guess I could have been emblematic too. We do need to talk about Callan Ward, because it is incredibly unfortunate that he tore his ACL. You had the feeling right away, seeing it was non-contact. I mean, there was plenty of talk during and after the game, like, this is a guy who needs to have an award named after him at the Giants, like the best club man or like most courageous player or something like that.
I know Toby Green is the most closely linked player to GWS at this point. Phil Davis had a big role as well, but like, you want to talk about like the most universally liked guy who's been like a long-time Giant? It's got to be Callan Ward.
An inaugural Giant. He had up to then, and maybe for a couple more games now, he holds the games played record for the Giants. You saw the emotion, not just from him, but from the other players, especially the long-term guys like Whitfield, consoling him after his injury. And then Callan still found a way to impact things with his pep talk before the fourth quarter about reliability and playing the role that you know you can play. They won this game for Callan Ward.
When I saw that speech, I didn't necessarily think they were going to win, but I thought there's an avenue here. If they're going to win this game, this is where it starts. And yeah, that's where it started.
You know, Benjamin, 78% of our listeners are between 18 and 35 years old, so they probably want to start a podcast like we did.
How did you know that number, Ethan?
Thanks to the analytics we have for Spotify for Podcasters.
Formerly known as Anchor, sorry Frio fans, Spotify for Podcasters has tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast from your phone or your computer. No fancy software needed.
It's so easy you can edit it while drunk.
And Spotify for Podcasters doesn't just allow you to upload to Spotify, you can also distribute your podcast on platforms like Apple, Stitcher, and more, just like we do.
Best of all, it's completely free.
Not only is it free, you can even make money from listener support or ad revenue. Hint, hint.
Download the Spotify for Podcasters app or go to podcasters.spotify.com to get started today.
Once again, it's episode 241 of Americans Watching a Footy with us, your favorite Seppo rabble rousers. I am Benjamin Kassel at BenjaminHK01 on Twitter.
I'm Ethan Kassel. I'm at Kassel Media. Brian Harambe's just sitting on the bed chilling. He's on Instagram exclusively, a cat named Brian.
He's been a very attentive executive producer.
And we are collectively on Instagram at Americans Footy.
Also Twitter and YouTube. You may be listening on YouTube. If so, hello there.
Sydney 5-11-41 defeated by Adelaide 21-5-131. You know how I said, like, there are only a couple teams out of this round that could come out really disappointed? The Swans are the big one of them.
Yeah, damn it. And I don't say that as a Swans fan. I say that as someone who was pumped up for this game, only to be very sorely disappointed.
I thought, like, if we were ranking all the games this round, this would have been up there with Hawthorn Collingwood for me and, like, Alice Springs. I thought this was the most important game because either, we find out the Crows can do something on the road, or the Swans have a chance to salvage their season. And holy fuck, this was bad. 33-8 after a quarter, 75-10 at half, 112-37 after 3. It got to the point on multiple phases tonight where both during the second and fourth quarter, the crowd was cheering for behinds. Like, the fans had fun with getting their asses kicked, at least. Someone we follow, and I can't recall who, and I can't find the tweet right now, said that this still isn't Sydney's worst loss to a South Australian team in this fiscal year.
Because of the 112-point loss to Port. But that was in Adelaide, though, wasn't it?
Yeah, at least, I mean, that's still bad, but at least with this, you can...
And the Swans redeemed that one by beating him in the prelim pretty handily.
This was just terrible on the Swans' part. And I've said this before. I think I mentioned this last week as well. Every time they showed Dean Cox in the coach's box, it's like they're trying to tell a viewer, do anything except become an AFL coach. Your life is going to be miserable.
Meg, do not go AD Pie.
They were the rabblest bunch of rabbles that ever rabbled.
We don't usually open with polished turd discussion. It was kind of difficult. I mean,
Tom McCartan was tested a lot and wasn't that bad. And then other than that, what did I send you?
You said Isaac Heaney, and I was all right with that. I didn't think Will Hayward had done enough. And Heaney also did fight through the Sam Barry matchup, although Barry had a good game otherwise.
That's back-to-back really quality games from Sam Barry, where it's like, he's never going to be a top-of-the-line player, but just that he's individually taken his standard from maybe be the sub now and then maybe get a game when guys are hurt to like having a real case to be in the 22 every week is a really big step forward for him.
I feel like we kind of have to open with that discussion because that's more the story of the game than this being Adelaide's brutality.
This is my brutality!
I will say this for the Crows. James Peatling had a really good first half. I loved his contested work. The Crows are going to have to be a team that wins games in both 50s, and I don't necessarily, as I talked about in the prior episode, I'd still probably take Port's back six over them, but I think the Crows might have, if not the best forward group in the entire competition, one of the best. If you're telling me you're going to get Darcy Fogarty, who's both such a good kick for goal and a good setup, this version of Josh Rochelle, who's just been ridiculous lately. I guess Ben Keys, he's kind of a midfielder, kind of a forward. And then the Walker and Phil Thorpe combo, that's pretty lethal.
If you're talking about contributions over the full game and just being the steady guy throughout, this is another one of those games where Alex Neil-Bullen is shown. For a guy who was just a quiet role player on that 2021 Melbourne Premiership team, never got talked about enough there, he still somehow manages to fly under the radar with this Crows team because of the other bigger names around him. But super steady contributions, a goal and 2 assists from 25. 6 scored involvements were tied for second with Cumming and behind Rochelle's 9. I don't know, there's just something that I really like about Neil-Bullen in general, just like
he's one of the guys that can have an impact on different parts of the oval and
can quietly elevate the floor and the ceiling, I think, for a lot of other players.
He's a more offensively oriented midfielder, I would say.
I think that's a nice way to put it. Yeah, and we'd seen that from him at Melbourne, kind of capitalizing off the initial work at stoppage done by the rest of that really deep group there, whereas they had Angus Brayshaw playing out the back, they had Neil-Bullen out the front, and the Crows really benefit a lot from that.
This was a great example of fantasy points not equaling actual contributions.
Are we talking about the ruck battle?
Yes, because I thought Riley O'Brien was way better than Brodie Grundy, even though Grundy was the top player on the ground by points. I thought O'Brien kind of kicked his ass, if we're going to be honest, especially just considering what you expect out of each of them.
O'Brien's putting in a very good audition for his job, given he's out of contract and the potential for the Crows to be involved in a huge ruck carousel this offseason. Obviously, Tom Dakota would set it in motion, as would Sean Darcy, but O'Brien's a name that's been popping up more and more there. I guess, maybe there's potential for Sam Draper and also Rowan Marshall to be linked to the Crows, and O'Brien perhaps to the Blues and all of this. Who knows? It could really feel like an NHL goalie carousel. I don't think we've really gotten that quite in our 6 years watching the AFL yet.
Also, since the final couple minutes of Showdown, Mark Keane has just been on one, and that continued here. 15 intercepts, 10 marks, 8 intercept marks, 10 spoils. If we're just looking at the window of like the last month or so, you could make an argument for him right up there with Harris Andrews and Sam Taylor. Do I expect that to last long term? No. I don't think Mark Keane is going to keep playing this well. I also didn't realize he's only 25, but like if he's just like 2/3 of this, you'd be extremely happy. And then, you get Nick Murray healthy, take out Jordan Butts, who's definitely the weak link on this defense. And you're looking at, I still don't think it's a premiership defense, but I think you have the pieces between the defense and the midfield where you could be good enough when the forward group is dominant.
If only he doesn't bend and break, he'll meet them on the other side.
That's a reference to the band Keane, and I don't know which song, and I don't really care.
Bend and break.
I only know Somewhere Only We Know and
Is It Any Wonder?
That's the one, yeah.
Which is another hell of a song. Bend and Break is off their first album.
I had a dream that there was a Jelly House song, like Somewhere Only We Riz, and I'm disappointed that it isn't real.
Have you sent him that idea?
I put it in a comment, but I did message him about doing a Jimmy Buffett song and calling it Yacht Rock.
Okay, you're going places with that. But I actually had written down the same thing, like thinking back to that last intercept mark of Showdown, that Mark Keane has just been really on top of things at a time where the Crows have really needed him to be still without who you consider their best defender.
He's been getting those top assignments. He's not the biggest guy, but he's done really well.
Yeah, still thinking it was like kind of wiry in there. Also, I love that he's doing it while wearing number 48.
Before we do the Sunday games, I just saw an article from SEN. Champion Data reveals top 10 AFL players at the halfway mark of the 2025 season. There are a couple in here that I really don't think should be, because I think it's just volume stuff.
Lockie Ash.
Yes, he's at 3, and at number 2 is another volume guy.
Nick Dacos.
Jack Sinclair.
Sorry, I had to.
Bailey Dale's down at 7 if we're talking volume. Riley Philthorpe's at 6. Nazia's at 4.
I don't believe, by the way, that Nick Dacos is a volume guy.
No, but who is number 1? This I actually kind of agree with.
Is this like average or cumulative rating points? Is it cumulative over 11?
I don't know how they do it, but it's through
Champion Data.
It's through 11 or 12 games. I'm not giving away if it's someone who's had a bye yet, letting you interpret for yourself.
If you like it so much, it's got to be Ed Richards.
Yep.
I am completely unopposed to that. We talked a bit more about him and the rest of his team and the others on buys in our progress report for those 4 round 12 buy teams. That's our previous episode. Go back and listen to that if you haven't. For now, though, we progress to the Sunday action and another moral victory.
This is the game I have not seen yet out of this round because I was at a very good high school baseball section championship game. I will be watching this in the next couple days. Melbourne 7-21-63, defeated by St. Kilda 14-7-91. I cannot believe the Saints are less reliant on Jack McRae than the Hawks are on Will Day, which was really not something I expected. Now, I got out of this game and I checked my phone and I saw 46-15, and I think I just texted Benjamin something along the lines of like, what the fuck?
You texted me literally, what the fuck? And yeah, I said the Saints were pushing the pace. I wonder if Melbourne were expecting a slower style against them because it is Ross ball. We know that the Saints are capable of this.
I'm surprised that this is a game where they did it. Why I would not have expected this in this game is because I would have thought Ross would have seen this and said, well, the D's probably don't want to play slow. Let's make them play slow. This could have just been a really slow, ugly game, which I think would have favored the Saints, because I think Melbourne often plays a lot slower than they
need to.
Yeah.
Even when Melbourne did take away their uncontested game, you start seeing in the second quarter, very obvious in the second half, St. Kilda still made good connections, and in terms of the top matchups in this game, was quieted by...
I know because A, you told me, and B, it featured in Max Lawton's 3-word analysis, Marcus Windhager. Now, was this more of a tagging job or just a beating him?
¿Por qué no los dos?
He was with Kazi the whole way. He followed him forward, beat him for a deep intercept mark there. beat him at the source. It was a Marcus Windhager click.
And he had 28 of his own disposals.
He and Kazi both had 5 clearances. You're not going to stop everything from Kazi, but limited Pickett to just 12 disposals and being scoreless. It was that constant presence right around him, keeping a body on him, a body that's a bit bigger than him too, just in terms of pure stature. We hadn't seen anything nearly as successful all year. And, that wasn't the entire reason the Saints won, but that was a big part of it. 4 of those clearances were at the center, still operating at 82% efficiency while having a decent contested split.
Now, I will say, I'm just looking at the numbers here. Kazi did get 5 center clearances, which he's very good at springing forward off the center bounce. And 9 contested possessions and over 90% disposal efficiency is pretty awesome. But limiting him to 3 score involvements is probably what you look at. Even if Melbourne wins this game and kicks straighter, you're probably still looking pretty positively at Windhager, right?
Oh, absolutely. You found a way to stop Kazi, and that's the top thing there. 3rd highest disposal game of his career while doing that job.
So I'm guessing you're a little surprised that he didn't get the perfect 10 and that Cal Wilkie did?
No, Wilkie did do a very good job. I just didn't think he was the main story in this game. Wilkie with 15 marks would definitely do it and 31 disposals, 11 intercept possessions. He was definitely the best defender in this game. And Stephen May took a while for him to really find his touch in this game too, because Isaac Keeler had a really strong start against him. 6th game, Isaac Keeler, mind you.
Keeler kept the sealer, if we're going to make dumb rhymes, right? Or he had a pretty important goal towards the end to put it out of reach.
Yeah, he had 3-1 in this game, and he was playing backside on Stephen May like he shouldn't, forced May to change his approach.
So basically, if Ed Allen didn't exist, he could have had a case for Rising Star.
Yes.
Which is awesome because he had been pretty insignificant in his prior appearances. Looking at, again, I'm just inferring stuff from the numbers here. Nobody with more than 18 pressure acts in this game. Was that because it was a kick-heavy game, or was that because it was a low-pressure game?
I mean, it definitely was a kick-heavy game, and I think that's the start of that. Because the game was fast at the start, it's not like there was a lot of time to apply a lot of pressure. And then when Melbourne were restricted in their movement, a lot more uncontested, slower action there, and they still had those, high floating entries that easily got contested or snuffed out. So I think Melbourne ended up playing into the Saints' hands in this game. They were getting numbers back well, but ended up really not mattering. So Kilder did a nice job of reading ruck contests, and that included Max Gawn's wins. And then they did well to change angles from there. You're talking about aggressive play. I mean, what Windhager did was there, and Hunter Clark being back too mattered a lot.
And Dan Butler had, 4 goals?
Yeah, Butler's 5th career 4-goal game, all as a Saint. Welcome back to him, too. Big inclusion, and Clark finding his form again was awesome. Clark 1-1 and an assist from 20, 5 tackles, and I don't know, it just felt like he had more pressure acts than he did. I think maybe it's just hard to define pressure act.
Also that, according to these stats, 7 of his 8 were in the defensive half. Maybe that's part of it.
I think that is a big part of it, yeah. It felt like a much more complete team in there. Here's a statistical oddity for you. Bradley Hill's 0 contested possessions.
I mean, he's mostly playing on the wing, and I know he played better in this game.
But he had 26 disposals and 0 contested possessions.
So I guess he had 3, there were probably free kicks or something.
And the rest was uncontested, mostly wing.
That's got to be up among the most uncontested possessions without a contested possession, right?
Yeah, I wonder if Swamp has something on that. Another guy I'll credit on the outside, on the other side, Hugh Boxall. Did well on the outside defensively and then on the rebound too. It was a game where you saw a mix of young and old just finding their touch for the Saints between what we said about Clark, Keeler with the 3 big goals.
What is the record for uncontested possessions in the game? I just looked this up.
I mean, it could be in the 40s or something with one of those, what was it? Tom Mitchell's overall record for disposals of the game was 54. He probably, or maybe Gaz had a really uncontested game at one point with the Suns.
It is held by a guy who was in Parliament until just a couple years ago, or at least was in the Northern Territory Legislative Assembly. Joel Bowden with 41 for Richmond in a 2009 game against the D's. They lost that game, and he had 44 disposals in all.
Okay, he had a couple of contested possessions, though, right?
He did. He had 3. Bailey Dale's 37 this year in that game where he had, 49 is up there. Bradley Hill, actually, in a 2017 game for Freo against Essendon, had 35 and 3 contested.
Okay, you see, that's the tough part, looking for games with no contested possessions at all.
This seems like something you should ask Swan.
Oh, definitely.
Please do this.
The only negative that I have about the Saints out of this game is that Matthias Philippou did his calf. But Jack Carroll came in, didn't do that poorly his debut as a Saint. Didn't light anything up, but a solid contributor with an assist from 11.
Did he not light any mups?
I don't think anybody's going to get that here.
No, people know the song. People know about mups.
In Australia?
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty well-known song. People know about Mup Watch.
Maybe. Mind you, Melbourne did score the first goal of this game.
And then the rest of the way, they kicked 6-21.
Bailey Frisch got the first goal, and then the Saints never looked back from there. It was, I can't really call it comedic. Definitely satisfying from a Saints perspective. Oh, actually, there was another down thing about this game, the Aiden Johnson play.
Yeah, he's making his way onto your shit list pretty quickly.
Oh, he's on my shit list. 5 games and 2 suspensions for contact to the head.
And so far, he hasn't been an especially good player either. I mean, he served a purpose at times as tall depth, but that's frustrating. He gets 2 games now. What if Nazaya was concussed? Would it just be 3, or could it have been more?
It could have been more, honestly. I mean, if they didn't have to go by the flowchart, I would have said that's 4. Because he left the ground to bump, caught Nazaya high, and it's his second defense already this year. Because in round 1, he drove Callum Brown's head into the ground.
Oh yeah, he let both feet. That wasn't even like an attempt to spoil or something.
No, it was as clear as like Kazi going headlong into Bailey Smith.
That's so fucking bad. That should definitely be more than 2 games. But again, you got to punish the action, not the outcome. Kate McCarthy from 7 said, one of the worst incidents on a football field this year. I agree with her. This is not a football play, this one. That's the difference. You know, the first one he was suspended for was just a bad football play.
The fact that it's even more egregious head contact after the first one was pretty clear infuriates me. Thank goodness Nazaya was not concussed from this and ended up closing out the game and playing quite well. Nazaya in the jumper he designed with an assist from 29, 6 scored involvements, just a steady, uncontested Nazaya game that we come to expect. Was the game's ground gain leader with 795 meters. Still waiting for him to get extended. Please, Saints, lock this guy up. In a positive sense. Round 12 concluded
with the US Bowl.
The Kassel Cup. West Coast Eagles 11-7-73, defeated by Geelong 17-14-116. Boy, that does not reflect the actual flow of this game.
No, not at all.
It reflects one of the greatest sights in all of Australian rules football, though, garbage time Jeremy Cameron. Cameron even said Ruben Jimmy got the better of him. Yeah, and yet he got more coaches' votes than him.
Garbage time Jeremy Cameron and fourth quarter Ollie Dempsey. I don't think there's a player I trust more at the end of games than Ollie Dempsey. Like, even if he ends up doing something like that costs us a game at some point, I will still believe in him. There has to be like a huge body of evidence for me to give up on this.
Hell, Reece Staley also finally did good things in the fourth quarter.
I guess this is a game that you definitely kind of, you don't always tell the story in chronological order. You go in order of importance, but I think the chronological order describes a lot here. So 17-point Geelong lead at quarter time. Well, it was an 11-point lead until the quarter time siren, and it should have been a lot more, but very wasteful. 3-5 until the Brian buzzer beater.
And man, you were loud for that.
That was fun.
I mean, you were loud multiple times for Brian in this game.
Yeah, he had 2 goals in the first quarter, and this should have been so much more of a blowout at the time. 30 marks to 9, 8 free kicks to 2 because of superior pressure, tackles inside 50, 10-1.
Having said that about the free kicks, there were a couple that I was shocked that they didn't get.
There were a couple,
but I'm not going to complain about the free kick count.
The team that put on superior pressure is going to get in theory, should be the one earning more free kicks unless they are really, really undisciplined. Free kick count for the entire game ended up only 16-13. So after the first quarter was actually 11-6 Eagles, but there were also, I believe, no free kicks in the entire third quarter. Was that?
I forgot to mention GWS in Richmond.
That's right. It was GWS in Richmond. This is a swamp fact. The third quarter of GWS in Richmond was the first quarter without a free kick since a game in round 16 of 2015.
And the free kick count for that entire game, ready for this? 15-4. Richmond. A team won while getting only 4 free kicks called their way.
But this could and should have been a lot more lopsided.
Oh, should have been totally. No, this...
And this is where, like, if you just looked at how the Eagles played in the first quarter, you would think that this team was the rabblest bunch of rabbles that ever rabbled. I mean, the amount of times they turned it over in their own defensive half was just unreal.
Then, though, later, they were doing a better job generating turnovers in the front half. And that was how some things did manage to turn around. And the Eagles won the second quarter and drew the third. Harley Reid gave the Eagles a lot of life in the second quarter. I noticed the time that he kept running on, he kicked the ball inside 50, then ran in and got out a Connor O'Sullivan handball to score a goal. And that was a big momentum shifter there.
So my take on Harley Reid has not changed. Well, I will say this. The vibe seems so much better than he had in the first few weeks, but I continue to say that, like, the upside is so insane because the physical talents are ridiculous. His football sense at this point is decent, but still has room to grow. And as that grows, my God, he's going to be just unbelievable. And there's a fun factor to everything he does because you know that he has every physical skill in the book. He's the best athlete out there. And that includes in this game going up against a team that included a former steeplechaser. Did you know Mark Blitzovs is a former steeplechaser?
Mark Blitzovs is a former steeplechaser.
Yeah, he used to do the steeplechase.
And Reese Stanley has a basketball background.
During halftime, there was a little bit of 2-minute feature on Ollie Dempsey and showed like some of his old basketball footage. And basically, if he hadn't stopped growing, he was looking at coming over to the U.S. and playing in college.
Yeah, I knew that he had like NCAA in the sights.
In a different timeline, maybe he's a San Francisco Don.
St. Mary's.
I don't know. He doesn't fit the St. Mary's mold. Maybe he ends up somewhere else entirely. Maybe he's a Southern Utah Thunderbird.
He's more than Southern Utah. My gosh. He'd transfer after his freshman year. Someplace better than that.
After that Harley goal, it was 49-37 Geelong. The expected score was 48-26. But West Coast kept on the pressure. Really, the Eagles were the superior team in the second half of the second quarter and the second half of the third quarter, and cut the lead from 25 down to 12 at three-quarter time, and evened out within 6 on an Archer Reid goal early in the fourth. Couldn't get it any closer than 6. Noah Long missed a relatively easy kick that would have cut it to 1. Ollie Dempsey goal, Tyson Stengel goal, Reese Stanley Pack Barkin goal, and then they ended up kind of running it out from there. It was only a 17-point game with 9 minutes left.
And then garbage time Jezza. Before that, Ruben Jinby had held Jeremy Cameron accountable for 3+ quarters, and that was really pleasing because there were a lot of questions from Eagles fans about, like, and Cats fans. You know, just like, really, is Jinby the guy to do this? And in the long run, you'd still like some taller guys to be able to do it. Felt strange to me that even when you had Sandy Brock in there and Harry Edwards too, that they gave Jinby that responsibility, but not going to question Andrew McQualter now. And I have been asking, can anything aside from Sandy Brock and Harry Edwards' tall defense hold up at the defensive 50 for the Eagles? Because Brock had only allowed like 1 goal against him in the prior 3 games. That was Darcy Fogarty late against the Crows. I have a lot of praise for Brock, and I think he's flown under the radar because of the rest of the Eagles' struggles. And the better pressure in this game helped somewhat, but not enough. It's why I insist that Brady Hoff should remain in defense as like the main small one-on-one guy, despite the other good stuff that he did in this game. I can explain my complicated thoughts on Brady Hoff further later, but yes, Jinby on Cameron did work, and Jinby has the motor to keep running with a guy like him too.
Yeah, because, Cameron got the first goal, and I was thinking, like, oh, here we go. He's going to have a big day. And then still, like, every touch he got was still, like, super dangerous. Like, Jinby did much more to shut him down than Cameron did anything wrong. So give a ton of credit to Jinby for that. I thought there were just a bunch of quality individual performances from West Coast that I wanted to highlight. Now, Liam Baker ended up with some coaches' votes, but he had an actively bad first quarter. He was part of why they couldn't get out of their own end. And then after that, he played pretty well.
Pretty funny that Baker started poorly when he was back wearing
Black and gold.
excuse me,
Or yellow and black.
yellow and black. I was not a big fan of the WA Day jumpers. They look like decent training tops.
You know, as a one-off special event thing, I had nothing wrong with it.
I'm glad they didn't do it against Frio.
Yeah.
But having said that, I still think that there should be a Western Derby held on that sort of Sunday night before WA Day.
Or you know what? Maybe you make that a weekend where one's at home Saturday, one's at home Sunday.
Something like that, because like think about how cool it's been to have that Sunday night Q clash before Queensland's Labor Day. That's my thought. Or like,
yeah, that's fair.
or the
Seems like
or King's Eve.
it seems like the thing for a while now has been to have a really early derby, like round 3-ish.
And then one right at the end.
Yeah, so you'd have to
really change that up and have
I like the idea of this becoming, you know, a constant like event for the Western teams, whether it be the, you know, because I mean, what else do they have? You know, I guess maybe the night game on Good Friday,
which was more of an evening game this year for the Eagles. You don't really have that much. The last time we've really had something where everybody's been watching is Dreamtime in Perth, and that wasn't even a Western team in that.
I will still maintain that atmosphere-wise, that was the best stream time.
Oh yeah, it was awesome.
From at least from what we got on TV. I would love to see more of the, you know, like drummers and stuff after goals when Dreamtime's at the G. I've said this before, but like, so obviously Harley Reid's physical tools were on display. Brady Hoff totally contained Bailey Smith in the second half.
Yeah, I noticed it particularly in the third quarter, and this is what complicates my feelings about Hoff. You will not find many more passionate Brady Hoff supporters than I.
So you have, I think, a lot of people who have just watched the Eagles altogether have been like impressed with him regardless of how competitive the game is.
But I think I was on him right away, even when he was first there as a wing and not doing much contested. Then held Charlie Cameron goalless at the GABA, and I kind of was like, I told you this guy had a lot of defensive ability. We know he can be a hell of a small 1v1 defender. He also goes and quiets Bailey Smith for most of the second half, and I just don't know, like, where does his future lie? I hope that he doesn't lose touch with this small defense aspect of his game, and I hope Andrew McQualter doesn't neglect that either, because it is really needed at times, and I wish that he could have done more, for example, to stop Tyson Stengel earlier. And look, you're looking at a very, very near future, if it hasn't already arrived, without Jeremy McGovern leading in defense too. That's another piece that you got to deal with. So I trust that Hoff will be good wherever he plays. I just don't know if where he's playing right now in the middle is the best for him and for the team long term. When you have pieces that you can work in there, more steadier role out of Elijah Hewitt has been really fun to watch. You still got Bo Allen to work into the game, or I think wherever they play Bo Allen, who I wish was not the sub in this game, should have been in the whole game. Wherever they play Bo, I think, will really have a lot of say as to where Hoff ends up long term. But you got those guys to work in. Tom McCarthy, the top midseason draft pick to bring in. Once Tom Gross figures out the pace and is able to just identify those quicker disposals, I want to see him steady in the midfield. I think you have more to work with there in terms of midfield pieces than you do in defense. So as for now, I'll say Brady Hoff should be a small 1v1 defender long term. But you understand the complications based on the visual evidence of how well he did against Baz.
I've liked Archer Reed in just like his ability to contest a little bit like Cal Sherdeer last year, even if he wasn't the one making the play himself, like just the presence affected the marking contests.
Hell, I'm thinking about a game that Josh Tracy had. I think it was actually the round 11 game against Port, where he was held scoreless and yet was so impactful just as a pure contest player. Now, Archer also had 3 assists for himself too, but he timed his entries into contests and timed his spoils and things like that really, really well. I'm so glad that he got back in for this game. You had Archer Reed and Jack Williams in there. I know Bailey Jane had his good moments in prior weeks, including in the win against the Saints, but I would much rather see Jack in there long term than Bailey when it comes to a Williams. Archer, Bailey, Oscar Ralph looking like himself again. Please stay at this point, honestly. Like, now I feel bad for Job Shanahan, because how the hell are you going to fit him into all this?
Someone will get, you can rest guys. Someone will get hurt. There will be ways. That's like the least of your concerns.
He'll get his time. I just don't want it to be at Jay Will's expense, and yet that's probably the most likely.
I thought Harry Edwards wasn't bad as a tall defender either.
Second to Sandy Brock, yes, but not bad. No, Brock has done very nicely already.
Like, there are pieces in there that, like, you can see the vision, you know, when you phase Liam Duggan out of, like, and maybe, I don't know if Matt Flynn's the solution, but he's definitely an improvement at ruck. And, you know, he beat Stanley in the middle quarters, and that's where the Eagles actually ended up on top in clearances and hitouts, which, like, yes, it was only one hitout and 2 clearances, but I mean, West Coast is normally, like, if you could have any ruck in fantasy, you just take the one facing the Eagles each week. And yeah, Flynn's helped there, and he's got some utility, you know, as a defensive intercept mark. Like, there are pieces here that you can see becoming useful players on an actual contending Eagles team.
This team is still at least 2 years away from being a year away, probably more.
Oh yeah, but like, you can start to see some of the personnel, and you can invest in the personnel as a fan, whereas you really couldn't do that before.
I mean, last year you had Harley, you had Hoff, you had the all-Australian emergence of Jake Waterman, but he's not obviously the youngest guy out there. No, you're seeing more things in motion now, and having a performance like this and being able to stick with Geelong for nearly a full game will do a lot to dispel some of the early critics of Andrew McQualter. Like, this is the kind of loss that you expect from a bottom 3 team.
Yeah, and
Like a loss that honestly you welcome.
yeah, look, if you play, I mean, the first quarter was bad, but to recover from that,
That's the thing.
and get close enough that you had an actual sense of belief and had the crowd in it until, you know, the final, like, probably 10 minutes or so. From Geelong's side, Bailey Smith, people were going nuts over his first half disposal count. It was into the 20s,
It's a disposal count.
but he was highly ineffective. Now, I will say this. On one hand, if this is a bad Bailey Smith game where he did enough to elicit getting tagged and finished with 38 disposals and, you know, was ineffective, but still 38, take that. I mean, I'd rather have an effective 25 to 30 than an ineffective 38, but like that's a bad game from him instead of, you know, just like invisible is really good and what this midfield needs. It was not a good game for Sam DeConing. He got beat a few times by Oscar Allen. He got a bit better as the game went on. And Brad Close, for once, I didn't want him getting the ball because his radar was off all game. He was sloppy. He was kind of a turnover machine. And I hope that doesn't discourage them from getting him the ball more in future games. But there were so many good things that helped offset this, like another great Connor O'Sullivan game. This was one where I knew he was good, and the underlying stats were just ridiculous. First off, he was the one who picked up a bunch of the one-on-ones where DeConing struggled. And Tom Stewart, who I'm surprised played in this game, he was definitely not 100%. Half of his possessions contested, 20 disposals, 90% efficiency, 7 score involvements, 11 intercepts. Bravo, Connor O'Sullivan, and really helped hold down the fort defensively along with Jack Henry to minimize Oscar Allen's impact as the game went on.
The underlying numbers sold for me the kind of impact that O'Sullivan had. And yeah, the week off did him a hell of a lot of good. It was management that ended up paying off. I mean, you had picked out the Bulldogs game to be the one to manage O'Sullivan, right?
Yeah, I had said, like, all right, he's gone quiet in the last couple weeks.
Is it also that, like, you saw a good use for Buse in that game?
Yeah, and then instead they managed Buse for this one. It's like O'Sullivan was less needed with ball movement with both Duncan and Buse. Mitch Duncan didn't, you know, played like half of the first half, but ended up being quietly really solid and effective once again.
Wish he could have gotten that goal late.
That would have been awesome. But
I mean, it's a West Perth kid. His very likely his very last game in Western Australia. Very nice way to go out for him.
He also finished with 19 disposals, 8 contested, nearly 90% efficiency, and 8 score involvements. So he was quietly really smooth. And then Oisin Mullen, you know, there were times when Harley Reid is just so overwhelming physically, but Mullen did his part and continues to look more and more comfortable with the ball. And, you know, a couple months ago, I was asking, like, why are you even playing him? He has so much more he needs to do to get the feel of the game to play at the AFL level. But between what he's shown as a tagger and like the general growth as an overall football player, I get why he's playing just about every week right now. And I'm not opposed to it. But the other thing, you know, you talked about West Coast just not being able to keep up for 4 quarters. And also just, I mean, how many like legitimate AFL level players do they have right now?
In this 23 for the Eagles?
Yeah.
How many would I say like regularly would belong on an AFL list in the year 2025?
This will be like in 2027, save for like Liam Duggan and maybe one or two others. Feel pretty good about it. But right now,
it's easier to identify the ones that I wouldn't have. I mean, it's unfortunate that Liam Ryan's potentially out of the North game this coming week when they're throwing hands. But when Liam Ryan is involved, the team gets that extra boost too. Unfortunately, Jaden Hunt is falling off. Tim Kelly had his moments in this game. He had his first goal of the year, the first member of the TK crew.
He was decent. He was not actively bad. Just give me the number. How many guys were the Eagles playing that were not AFL caliber? I don't need names. I just need the number.
I mean, at least 5 or 6. They're probably selling that short.
And that is the difference. And while the Eagles were able to say limit Bailey Smith, limit Jeremy Cameron for about 3.5 quarters, you weren't going to be able to cover every piece. And that's where guys like O'Sullivan and Duncan sprung up. That's where Ollie Dempsey had his huge fourth quarter. And that's where Brian Myers had his best game of the year. You know, I get that you're going to have to give up something somewhere as the less talented, less developed team. And normally I'm a big fan of contested possessions. Brian only had 3 of them, but he was at nearly 85% efficiency, 23 uncontested, 3 contested, 2 goals behind. Should have had an assist that Tyson Stengel dropped, 13 marks, 9 score involvements, and basically just West Coast didn't have enough competent players to cover everybody, and he was the one that was like, all right, we'll take our chances with him, and he burned them. And yeah, I would say it was the best game he's played this year. He ended up with the most coaches' votes. I don't know if I would have given him the most. I don't want to spoil too much about where we voted, but I did really like Max Holmes.
That kind of does spoil things the way that you just kind of led up to that. I mean, Holmes' running was on display clearly throughout the game.
The biggest thing for me with Holmes was the way he kept things afloat when the tide was going the other way. Like, there are a lot of concerns about the defense in this game, the ease of a lot of West Coast's entries. Even early in the game when they were only scoring against the run of play, that seemed way too easy for them to get goals against the grain.
Holmes impacted the game in different ways in the second half. It was less, the long kicks that were gaining a lot of ground, because he gained 742 fucking meters in the first half. At that point, like, Aaron Hall was sweating it at that point. He only gained 111 meters in the second half, still had his impact. Quick disposals, 7 clearances overall for Holmes, 7 score involvements, 5 center clearances for the game. When we talk about guys who are impacting the game well on different levels, that's the kind of thing you need to see.
You know, it was talked about how Chris Scott talked about it during his pregame interview about, just like how changes in the recruiting strategy, have gone more towards speed in the last few years, and nobody has really been more impactful with that than Max Holmes.
I enjoyed this game because we could take positives out of both of our teams in limited measures and really got to go into like our own analysis of our own teams in dialogue with each other. That was fun.
This is definitely the closest look I've taken to the Eagles this year. And, there have been parts that I've liked. And yeah, I think you get a lot more positive than negative out of this game. I'm sure I didn't mention Elijah Hewitt. I thought he was decent. You probably didn't love Tyrell Dewar, had some rough turnovers. Tyler Brockman had a rough game, but
I would have subbed out Dewar as early as middle of the third quarter to get Bo Allen on. And I wasn't alone.
I mean, I also get holding the sub. Geelong did you can't call it a victory cigar, but it was basically they just made the sub with the final rotation, took Reece Stanley off. I was ready to stub Stanley out after 3 quarters and just roll with blitz subs in the ruck. And then Stanley did a much better job in the fourth.
No, Stanley stepped up as he has a couple times this year. Just didn't expect it late from him. I'm just hoping now the Eagles could take the positive momentum from this game into actually picking up win number 2 on the year when they're throwing hands.
I'd like to see West Coast, especially since we don't have to play them again this year. I'd like to see them compete and push teams and hopefully win a couple games. Not too many, but a few.
Please, 2, 3 more. And I'd even take it at this point. But it's kind of crazy to believe. I mostly just don't want Richmond to have picks 1 and 2 or whatever.
Awards. Award of the week?
The award?
Yeah, it's like on The Simpsons when they said, recently won Award of the Year at the Awardee Awards.
Your round 11 winner for Mark of the Week was Carlton, Pete Cripps, 3 votes. That one over Toby Bedford, he got the knee into the back. We thought Max Michaelini could have gotten it with that one-handed intercept mark against Harley Reid. Didn't talk much about Michaelini for the Crows. Didn't need to.
But he and Josh Worrell were fine.
he stayed solid there, but they have been supporting pieces right now to Mark Keane. Someone not only they know.
Round 12, we got Bobby Hill's knee to Jarman Impey's back. Mitch Hinge going back with the flight in between James Rowbottom and Jordan Butts, and Daniel Turner kind of with his knee to the back of Jack Carroll's head.
Turner got some nice height on that one. I think the best of the takes, though, in my opinion, will go to Bobby.
Yeah, I think so. None of these were amazing. They were solid.
You won't see him on Brownlow night.
No. Round 11 winner was Tim Taranto picking up a crumb and finishing from the right pocket on the right. There were a bunch of good ones in round 11. I also really like Max Holmes with the 3 bounces, but they didn't even have the best ruck goal around in there. They had a Tristan Jerry one. They should have had Kieran Briggs for soccering out of the air on a ball up.
That, to me, is my goal of the year leader, personally.
I don't know if it's goal of the year, but it's pretty good. That Taranto one, if Taranto had beaten out that Briggs one, I would have had no complaints. It's bad that the Briggs one wasn't even considered, because it's definitely one of the top 3 goals of the round.
I mean, goal of the year stuff, it's going to be up there with, like, Ryan's first goal. That's the one I'm still riding with. Or maybe something from Rankin during the showdown.
Or there were a couple out of this round that I really liked.
Yeah, I mean, you got the clear third place, I'll say, was Harley Reid. He had that 1-2 with Sandy Brock before he had the entry kick. And after Connor O'Sullivan contested against Oscar Allen, he overcooked a handball and Harley was there for the finish. That was that high effort play that I was talking about in the second quarter that I absolutely loved.
If the kick from 50 had gone through, it would have been considered, but it was not.
We've also got a Sam Flanders check side, this toe tap off a clearance that was really sweet.
And it cut it to 6 points. That was when you thought, oh shit, the Suns are going to win this game.
It wasn't stupid. It was sexy Flanders.
Sexy Flanders!
It was a great play.
But our winner is what Nate Caddy did, kicking over his head. Have we seen an overhead goal since Riley Philthorpe for the win in Cairns?
I think so.
It's the most memorable one since then, clearly. Hell of a player Nate Caddy's becoming. I think DeLong and Essendon fans are both happy with how that trade has worked out so far. With, I think it was DeLong moving back a pick and Essendon taking Caddy. DeLong with that next pick took Connor O'Sullivan.
Yeah, I think that's working fine both ways.
Especially if Shannon Neal works out.
Shannon Neal had good hands this week, by the way.
After his 5-goal performance the prior round.
I guess we can segue from that Caddy goal into the assist of the week.
Yeah, usually we talk about behind first, but no, this is necessary. Yeah, because that Caddy goal was set up by the assist of the week.
So there were 2 other very worthy assists. You had James Peatling with kind of an accidental assist. It would have been a goal, but so he kicked this dribbler from the right pocket that got past Matt Roberts and Tom McCartan, and then Riley Philthorpe kind of stepped on it on the goal line. So he kind of vultured it. In a lot of weeks, I would call that assist of the week.
Riley Philthorpe had been a vulture before, hadn't he?
I think so. And then
was that like his 5-goal showdown?
Maybe.
And I was just thinking, damn it, you know what I'm thinking about now?
What?
You did that to Lockie Jones.
Oh, yes. That was him. That's right. I mean, you look at Riley Philthorpe, it's like, if he does that to you, it's like, yeah, I did that.
Yes, sir, I understand.
It's like the Sean Oakman memes, it's like, heads or tails, we want the ball. Okay, you get the ball. Anyway, Josh Rochelle had what would be one of the best assists any other week. Now, depending on the way the sequence goes, this could have also just been one of the best field kicks of the week, but Riley Philthorpe kicked out of the defensive 50. It got deflected, and then Rochelle just like one-time toe tap soccered it ahead. It was like a perfect through ball, basically, because Ben Keys was able to pick it up on the run and then finish.
Look at what it meant to them.
This was just like an all-time awesome sequence start to finish. But the winner is the kick that set up the Nate Caddy goal. Now, I think Jade Gresham might have been bidding for a goal himself on it, but it ended up working out.
It wasn't as blatant of a goal attempt as Peatling's.
Basically, he ended up kicking check side across the face of the goal from deep in the left boundary, and then Caddy ended up, kicking over his head.
Is that your leader in the clubhouse for assist of the year?
That's still the Jackie Chan one.
Oh, shit. How did I forget that? That was Will Ashcroft, because no Jovic want to kick it. Will Ashcroft.
Yeah.
This is going to be up there, though, probably in our top 3 out now. Behind of the week is actually pretty similar because it's an overhead thing. It was Jack Williams trying to kick over his head, but it stayed to the left. Your round 11 winner was Kazi Pickett with a dribbler to the post after he burst through a contest. I mean, a lot of post hits are going to be behinds of the week for us. I think probably about half of them as of now, including the clear leader in the clubhouse for behind of the year, the Jeremy Cameron bicycle attempt.
Worst on round. We've got a vote that I hope this episode's up before the vote closes.
Hell yeah, it'll be.
So last week, we gave it to Nick Watson. This week, we've got another Hawk up for consideration. It's 2 defenders that had a rough time this week.
Hawk 2 defenders?
Hey. Well, Ned Long should have mentioned this when we were talking about the Collingwood game. He went from being a Hawk to a Magpie. Like when Kevin Herter got traded, he went from being a Hawk to a King. Anyway, your nominees are Josh Battle and Dane Rampy. Fight amongst yourselves to decide. Main character
last week was a very obvious one with Ross Lyon, the whole Nepo baby thing. And then, of course, the Suns had pathetic attendance this week. Your round 12 main character, normally we don't do anything about injuries or anything like that, but there were enough positives out of what Callan Moore did, because even after what likely ended his career,
we'll see. I think maybe he'll decide, I'm not going out like that. I'm going to do one more year.
His family's already back in Victoria. The way that a lot of people were wording it sounds like it could very well be the end for him. But nonetheless, with that speech he gave on reliability and knowing your role in three-quarter time, he totally inspired that Giants comeback. And so for those positive reasons, his willingness to be upfront with the media about his stuff too. He talked with Cam Mooney right after he gave the speech too. Shows a hell of a lot of character and shows why so many people love this guy. Still having such a big impact on the Giants in year 18 of his career. Hope this isn't the end for Callan Ward, and I hope that he's got a good footy life in him post-playing too.
I'm just saying, in the Super Bowl year, Terrell Suggs returned from a partial Achilles tear in 5 months and 6 days. He did suffer a complete tear a couple years later, but, this is something where you can play for the short term. Also, I think the Wayne Miller thing got buried quickly, and a lot of us agreed that it was stupid, but he would have been a main character considered as well. Rabble.
By the way, want to note, super cool stuff that happened between former teammates involving Callan Ward. Who was there to drive Ward home from the airport and help him around after that? Tim Taranto.
That's awesome. That is very wholesome. Yeah, I was going to say he probably wasn't going to be taking the Sky Bus. I'm going to be taking the Sky Bus a bunch.
Ward and Taranto were on the same flight back to Melbourne. Taranto drove him home from the airport. Simple things like that. And it shows the respect that these players have for each other. I mean, yes, obviously, you have these top athletes. They're all going to know each other. They mostly ought to like each other, you'd hope, but still a pretty class act. And on that positive note, we're going to close things out here. Holy cow, this episode 241. We're not quite going to catch Jack Crisp's games played streak within the year, I think, but we could in the offseason.
Please stay healthy, Jack. You've been playing very well.
I look forward to celebrating his 250th consecutive game, regardless of the result for King's birthday.
All right, that's the episode. I don't have much else to give you. We're on Twitter at Americans Footy. We're also on Instagram, YouTube. We have a Linktree thing that kind of can direct you to all of those as well.
No OnlyFans yet.
Yeah. Ooh, is there a WikiFeed page for us yet?
I don't think so. Plus, we're not going to beat Jack.
Yeah, that's true. Jack's Films is the king of WikiFeed.
Ethan is at Castle Media. I'm at Benjamin HK01. Brian Harambe has been a very good executive producer again tonight. He is on Instagram at cat named Brian. This has been the rabble rousers that are Americans watching the footy.